Prije nekoliko tisuća godina neistražena prostranstva ležala su s druge strane rijeke ili neke daleke planine. Potom s druge strane oceana, sunčeva sustava, galaksije, na dnu oceana ili pak u unutrašnjosti atoma. Neke tajne postupno su se otkrivale, ali najveće neistraženo područje tek je načeto. Ljudski mozak, i svijest. Što se zbiva u kemijsko-biološkim strukturama mozga? Kako se u toj sivoj materiji pojavljuju tako suptilne pojave kao što su misli, ideje, iskustva, osjećaj sepstva, svjesnost? Kakva je veza između plasticiteta mozga, meditacije i namjere? U konačnici, može li se poboljšati vlastiti mozak? Upravo to su teme kojima se bavi dr. Fred Travis, direktor Centra za mozak, svijest i spoznaju. A rado su viđene i ovdje, na Rubu Znanosti. Dobro večer. Dr. Fred Travis, ravnatelj Centra za istraživanje mozga, svijesti i kognicije, sveučilišni profesor i dekan postdiplomskog studija na Maharišijevom sveučilištu za menadžment u Iowi, te autor brojnih znanstvenih istraživanja iz tog područja. A u središtu njegovih istraživanja mozga su učinci meditacije. Dobro večer.
Good evening.
Za početak, kako se mozak uključuje u ono što smatramo našim iskustvima, pa onda možemo iz toga krenuti dalje i vidjeti na koji način možemo poboljšavati naše iskustva.
So let us begin. How are you seeing me right now? I mean, obviously light's coming through your eyes, but it goes to the brain, it creates a ringing over the brain. And it's that ringing over the brain, the communication among hundreds of billions of neurons that lets you create a picture of me. The sounds from my lips are hitting your ears, but it's the ringing in the brain that lets you actually understand this. So what we have is the brain, it's the link. It's the link between us and our environment.
Koji su to dijelovi mozga i na koji način je uključeni u naše svakodnevno iskustvo?
To think of the brain actually has a back and a front to it. The back part of the brain folds down, the front part of the brain folds down. They actually divide it up. So the back part of the brain is your concrete sensory area. It's where you create a picture of the outside world. It's interesting, light hits the eyes, but it's not processed until it gets to the back of the brain. So this is your concrete present. In fact, that's where I am right now in your viewers. This person sitting, talking, it's this film that's just playing in the back part of their brain. To actually do something with that, to take it out of just the immediate present and think about it, you need to use the front part of the brain. The front part of the brain has connections to all other parts of the brain. It takes information that we're actually seeing, combines it with emotions, with plans, with values, with intentions, and then it creates what we want to do. So what we have is the back part is a concrete present, the front part of the brain is thinking, is planning and desiring, and what's happening with every experience is there's a ring between those areas.
Mozak nije toliko zadan svojim mogućnostima i oblikom kao što se čini. Postoji njegova odlika koja se zove neuroplastičnost ili neuroplasticitet. To znači da se zapravo mozak može mijenjati cijeli život pomoću inputa kojemu mi dajemo. Koje su zapravo ograničenja i mogućnosti toga što našem mozgu pruža njegova neuroplastičnost?
This is an excellent next question, neuroplasticity. Because the picture I've given you is almost as though the brain's like a computer, it has modules, it just works. Well, the reality is in the process of ringing that allows us to see the world, those circuits that are used actually changed. This is what neuroplasticity is. What happens with neuroplasticity is the neurons that fire, because for everything time you see something, it's one neuron sending information to another, and it's circuits of neurons, hundreds of thousands of neurons working together for a moment. And every time they fire, electrical activity goes down the output fiber, the axon, it turns to chemicals in the space between them, and then it's electrical activity. In that space is where the change happens. That's neuroplasticity. And what happens is all the cells that were involved in the experience get fed. It's a very simple system. Neurotropic hormone, they get bigger. They grow more input fibers. They're called dendrites. The output fibers branch out. The spaces between them gets primed. It's called long-term potentiation, so that when one neuron fires, they all will begin to fire. So neuroplasticity is just the result of the experience on increasing the weighting between different neurons. What's the limit to this? There's almost no limit. You have to understand your brain is not like this table. The table's been here for many years. It's very solid. Your brain, 70% of your brain connections change every day. 70%. The people watching this show, after the show, they're going to feel different. And it's a very real feeling because they have different ideas, different ways to see the world, and that's actually strengthening different circuits. And this is the important point here. We see the world based on brain circuits. Because of that, we make a decision and have some experience. That experience in turn changes brain circuits. So you can easily just get into a rut. You can watch the same TV shows, you can see the same people, you can take the same route to work, you can come home and do everything you do at home the same way, and you'll never actually grow. You won't change in how you see the world. But what neuroplasticity says is if you seek out new experiences, those experiences will begin to strengthen different circuits, and you'll begin to see the world in a different way. This is the value of the arts. This is the value of good media. And this is also the value of meditation practice that we'll be talking about. Mm-hmm. Gaining a new experience helps to change those brain circuits by which we see the world. Now, there is some upper limit of ability, and that is, by analogy, if you're a donkey and you want to run really fast and you work really hard, you become the fastest donkey on earth. But it doesn't mean that you can beat a thoroughbred horse. There's some inherent limitations there. So the whole trick in life, I feel, and this is what I tell my students, is find out what you enjoy, find out what you're good in, and put your attention there. Because then neuroplasticity is going to allow you to refine your mind and body and brain so you can really excel in that specific area and become really great in that area.
Drugim riječima, našu pažnju usmjeravamo u stvari koje bi nam trebale donijeti iskustva, koje će nam oblikovati mozak na onaj način kako bismo mi zapravo htjeli vidjeti svijet i tako možemo taj zatvoreni krug na neki način upregnuti u vlastitu korist. Tako sam dobro shvatio.
You understand correctly, yes.
U svom slučaju oslobađajuća spoznaja. Danas je vrijeme kada se često spominje jedan pojam stres, praktički sve stres. Hodanje po ulici, hrana, svakodnevni život, osim možda šetnje kroz šumu. Na koji način pak stres utječe na mozak, s obzirom da bi on bio ona druga strana ovog što smo do sada pričali i nažalost kroz neuroplastičnost mozga se odrazio na negativan način?
It's a very good insight and it's a very important question. But stress isn't, it's not a bounded thing. And that is an experience one day can be stressful, experience another day may not be stressful. And to understand this, we have to understand the difference between stress and challenge. Some people listening to your question may think, I need stress to get going. I need that outer pressure to really start focusing in on getting things going. I think what they're talking about is challenge, because under challenge, the primitive brain, the brainstem, actually activates the whole brain. Under challenge, you begin to see things more clearly. Under challenge, the front of the brain, remember that's the part that puts everything together, that begins to function faster. We like challenge. Challenge is how we grow. Challenge is how we explore new areas. But what happens is when the challenge gets too high, then it becomes stress. And what stress actually does is the brain turns itself off. It turns itself off. It turns down the functioning of the front part of the brain, the integrative centers of the brain. It turns on the primitive emotional system, the amygdala, and you just have a fight or flight response. So under challenge, what happens is you see the big picture. You have lots of creative ideas. You have lots of energy. You can focus for long periods of time, and you're not tired at the end. Suddenly, when that becomes stress, your broad vision just focuses in on what's immediately in front of you. You lost any chance for a creative solution. So what does this do, the stress do? What does the stress do? What the stress does is experience changes the brain, neuroplasticity, So what it does is it predisposes us to see everything not in terms of the larger symbolic space, not in terms of underlying relationships, not in terms of a possibility to combine our experiences and our understanding to something greater, but it just narrows down into protectivism, anything which is different from me, I don't want to deal with it. It focuses on the immediate now. And stress chronically shuts down the brain. So actually what happens, people who are under stress over long periods of time, the front of the brain, that integrator center, I sometimes call it the CEO of the brain, the chief executive officer of the brain, that part of your brain is physically smaller. The part of the brain that has to do with memory, the hippocampus, is physically smaller. This is what stress is doing to the brain. But again, the brain it's not a rock. The brain is a river and not a rock. It's constantly changing. So if you can do something to awaken the brain, do something to strengthen the frontal areas, what will happen is you'll begin to get out of that rut that you're in. Will begin to be able to see creative solutions. And again, this is what I think meditation procedures are very useful for, is a means to try to strengthen brain circuits, strengthen brain connections, so then we're able, in the same situation, to see the creative solution.
Možemo znači reći da pod stresom vidimo dijelove umjesto cjeline, što nas naravno ne može dovesti do rješenja određenih situacija. Kada se kaže meditacija, svatko ima neku svoju predodžbu o tome. Što je meditacija, danas postoje čak na kraju krajeva i razne škole meditacije. No, na što uopće mislite kad kažete meditacija u kontekstu neuroznanosti?
It's really a critical question. People are recognizing that they have to explore and expand inner resources, and this is what meditations do. But the point to understand is meditations are different. It's like asking a question about medication. What medication can I take? Should it be any medication? Doctors say no, medications do different things. Same way with meditations. Meditations have been put in 3 categories. The first category, called focused attention, are meditations that require a lot of mental effort, a lot of focus. These are your traditional concentration meditations. For instance, Zen meditation, where you try to keep your mind on one thought, not to allow it to move, or maybe to focus on one part of the body, not allow it to move. Or compassion meditation, in which you're trying to create a very pure experience of loving kindness and compassion. Pure meaning not connected with an object, but just that emotion unto itself. And in these meditations, you see the brainwave of focusing the mind. It's called gamma EEG. Gamma goes up and down 20 to 50 times per second, and you see gamma in the brain whenever you're focusing the brain. Many of your viewers, gamma is in their brain right now. They're trying to understand all of this information. They're trying to relate it with what they've experienced in the past. When you're doing that, when you're really focusing on a specific line of information, you see this gamma EEG. Other meditations use less effort, and what they involved is, rather than controlling the mind, just continuing to watch what's going on. These meditations are called open monitoring. And whenever you're doing that, that is, you have your attention within and you're following ongoing processes, you see a different brainwave. It's called theta EEG. It goes up and down 6 to 8 times per second. And many meditations show theta. This includes Zazen, where you just sit, you don't do anything, you just watch. It includes mindfulness, where you just are mindful of, you observe the ongoing processes, whether it's breath going in and out, whether it's a body scan, how is my body, is body tension, is it thoughts, is it emotions? And these first 2 meditations keep you involved in thinking. And what they do is they're developing specific cognitive skills, thinking skills that you can use after meditation. The last category of meditation involves least effort. It's called automatic. The category is automatic self-transcending. The self that's being transcended here is a meditation procedure itself. The other meditations involve being involved in the thinking process. So there's the knower, you're experiencing some object of experience. Meditations in automatic self-transcending actually allow the thinking process to settle down, to get to being. You're actually transcending. You're going beyond thoughts and categories and experiences and just experiencing what is that level of wakefulness which is at the source of thought. And when you're having this type of cognitive process, the attention turned within and you're just awake, what you see is a very specific frequency. It's called alpha 1. Brain waves go up and down 8 to 10 times per second. And meditations where we see this type of brain wave is transcendental meditation. And transcendental meditation is just that. It's a technique to start from the thinking process and allow the active thinking mind to settle down. And what's happening is thoughts are becoming secondary in experience. And what's becoming more primary is that underlying field of wakefulness within which we put everything together.
U centru vaših istraživanja mozga općenito, kao što je rečeno na početku, su učinci meditacije i meditacije same. Na koji način se istražuje meditacija kao područje istraživanja?
So meditations have different results. Specifically, whatever you experience during the meditation is what you see after the meditation. So if you wish to focus the mind in Zen during the meditation, you'll be able to focus the mind after meditation better. And indeed, what they find is parts of the brain having to do with focusing of attention are thicker in elderly meditators who have been practicing Zen for 20 or 30 years. So using that function, using that part of the brain helps to keep those circuits strong. Same way with mindfulness meditation. Practicing just watching experience allows you to be more mindful, more distance from your relationships. Someone blows up with you and start arguing. Instead of immediately just arguing back, you have some distance. You can begin to control it. Transcendental meditation doesn't develop a specific skill. Rather, it leads to a new state of consciousness. That is that state of wakefulness, alertness, which is underlying thought. And the value of this during meditation is that's what you bring into activity. And what it gives you is fundamentally a new way to perceive the world. Because all perception, all experience is you coming in contact with the environment. You can't change the environment. The world's going to go on as it is. But you can change you. You can change your experience of who you are, of what is important. And this is what transcendental meditation does. It allows the mind to transcend thought and categories, experience that part of you which is silent, which is full, which is outside of time and space. It's the part of you that's universal. And then when you come in, you bring more of your universal nature into the world. And this is where the benefits come from. Remember this challenge stress that we talked about? What's happening with transcendental meditation is you're beginning to see things more and more in terms of challenge. And a lot of this has to do with the blood flow studies during TM practice. We've conducted functional magnetic resonance imaging. We've compared blood flow during TM to eyes closed. And as you see in this figure, during TM practice, the core of the brain stem, is actually decreased blood flow. It's represented in this figure by blue coloring. Where notice the front of the brain, the CEO of the brain, the integrative center of the brain is increased blood flow. It's indicated as red on this figure. And so what you're seeing is a whole new style of cognitive processing, that is being able to be very quiet but highly alert. It's almost like a pond which is usually very choppy, becoming very, very quiet. But it's not an inert, it's not really stopping, it's not passivity, it's highly dynamic. So it's a very quiet pond, but it's very alert to everything falling on it. And this experience and this brain pattern during meditation is what happens after transcendental meditation practice and what underlies benefits.
Na koji način se danas sve istražuju meditacije?
It's a very good question, and actually you research effects of meditation on just all levels of the individual. You can just talk to them. And we have research looking at what's the descriptions of these deepest inner experiences during meditation when you're just awake and alert outside of time and space. You can look at the level of functioning of the body, and we find the whole sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, is more quiet. At the same time, you find the body is less reactive to stress, but you do find that it responds more quickly then it comes back down to rest. You look at breath rate and heart rate, and you find that breath rate and heart rate go down the longer you practice transcendental meditation. You can look at blood components. You can look at cortisol in the blood, which goes down. You can also look at the functioning of brain, which has been my main focus. And again, the reason is if the brain is the interface between inner and outer, even very refined meditation experiences should have their brain signature. So we've looked at the electrical activity of the brain. You and I are talking with words. Our brain cells are talking with electrical impulses. And so by just putting a piece of metal on the brain, half a centimeter in diameter, it can actually pick up the electrical activity from that part of the brain. You can also look at blood flow, as we talked about before. And if blood flow is increasing in some part of the brain, it suggests that that part of the brain is more active, more part of whatever the task is. You can also look at cerebral metabolic rate using radioactive substances put into the blood. We've looked at blood flow, but there's a marker from the electrical activity which is also quite distinct during transcendental meditation. And that is looking at what's the relationship between the electrical activity of different parts of the brain. And the reason this is important is research finds that if the electrical activity is similar between two parts of the brain, they're probably part of the same circuit that's processing what's ever going on. For instance, if you're seeing something, there's greater coherence in the back part of your brain, because that's your sensory area. If you're planning to move your body, there's greater coherence in the top part of your brain, that's your motor system. If you're choosing between different possible alternatives, you see more coherence in the front part of the brain. And you see coherence front to back as well. What we see in transcendental meditation, as we see in the next slide, that the coherence is in a very specific frequency band. It's the alpha 1 we talked about. Alpha 1 is just where the brain is quiet, is awake. And also we see it's over the whole brain. What you're seeing here is 3 columns. And the 3 different columns are different frequency bands. Notice the one on the right, gamma, there's no coherence during TM practice. And again, I mentioned this was characteristic of meditations and automatic self-transcending that involved minimal mental effort, minimal control, and that's why the coherence is so low. We see where the coherence is highest is in this alpha 1 frequency. We see it's right to left, front to back. It's as though as the mind settling down to the source of thought, so the brain settles down to its ground state. Not the ground state of doing, but rather the ground state of being. Not the ground state of localized parts of the brain giving rise to specific output. It's more the whole brain is awake, is alert. It gives a lively foundation upon which to process the world.
S obzirom da ste opisali nekoliko vrsta meditacije s obzirom na, recimo, tip valova koje stvaraju u mozgu, usmjerena pažnja, otvoreno motrenje ili automatska transcendencija, smatrate li da su neke od njih bolje ili gore, kompletnije, sveobuhvatnije, da neke možda daju više prednosti čovjeku ili ubrzavaju na neki način razvoj njegovog mozga nego neke druge?
It's an important question, the practical question. And each meditation is best for the aim it was set up to do. Focus attention meditations are set up to focus the mind, and probably if you do that, you'll be able to focus better. Compassion meditation is found to actually enliven the emotional parts of the brain, and you actually have a richer emotional state. Transcendental meditation is best for transcending, and it's because transcendental meditation is set up for that. I mean, the whole purpose is not to develop a specific skill, be it focus or an emotional state, but rather to allow the mind to explore a new state of consciousness. And so then the next question comes up, what do you want? If you need a very specific skill, you can pick up that specific skill with some meditation technique. If you actually want to change the whole framework and foundation upon which you see the world, and then you want transcendental meditation.
Kako oni koji dakle, su sudjelovali u istraživanjima meditacije transcendentalne opisuju to svoje iskustvo koje je drugačije, znači od usmjerene pažnje ili od jednostavnog motrenja unutarnjih procesa bez sudjelovanja u njima?
Excellent. I actually asked 57 people who have been practicing transcendental meditation for a few months up to many years to describe their deepest experiences during TM practice. And then I did something called content analysis. In that you take a series of words or phrases that exemplify a specific idea. You see how often that idea is repeated. The idea that was seen most often in their descriptions was transcendental meditation results in a state with the absence of time, the absence of space, and the absence of body sense. And this is something that's not reported in other meditations. And what we have with absence of time is that part of us which is closest to infinity. It's a part of us that is universal. So what you're experiencing as the mind settles down is you're going from an individual experiencing mind to just consciousness itself, wakefulness itself. It's the most full, most universal part of who we are. It's outside of space and outside of body sense. You no longer feel within the boundaries of the physiology. You're at one with that level of life which is underneath all of life. So this is the nature of the experience. Other meditations will depend upon their procedure. If the procedure is to focus attention, what you'll notice is you have a specific object in your mind and that's there the whole time. It's in terms of the object. Or if it's mindfulness, what you're noting is there's always a subject-object relationship. I'm maintaining watching. And the objects are going quickly through my screen of awareness, and there's always subject and object there. What we have with transcendental meditation is just pure subjectivity. It's self-referral awareness. Our consciousness, the way I see it, is like the light by which we see the world. It goes out through the senses, identifies with the objects, and that's how we see the world. Now, if you take this light of consciousness and turn it within to experience the knower, what you get is the knower being aware of its own structure. It's just pure subjectivity, pure self-referral awareness. And that's the nature of the experience during transcendental meditation.
Ako bismo pogledali malo praktičnije aspekte transcendentalne meditacije, danas više nisu rijetka istraživanja kroz rezultate učenika, studenata ili nekih specifičnih zadataka koji su dati ljudima. Može se reći da transcendentalna meditacija ne pospješuje rješavanje problema direktno, nego indirektno. Kakvi su se pokazali u stvari rezultati tih istraživanja vezanih uz matematiku, književnost, pisanje, glazbu, općenito način na koji su ljudi pamtili detalje, slike, prikaze, cjeline i slično. Na koji način je meditacija poboljšavala te njihove vještine od sasvim praktične vrijednosti?
Very, very practical question. I like to start with an analogy, and then we can look at some specific research. The analogy is you can learn how to take a knife and make special cuts in different ways. Or what you can do is stop using the knife for cutting and sharpening it. Other meditations, I see they're teaching you how to use a knife. They're teaching you how to use the mind, your cognitive, your attention, your emotional regulation. They're teaching you how to use the levels of mind that you have. Transcendental meditation is like sharpening the knife. It's like stopping doing and just allowing you to become more at home with the basis of the mind. And the benefits are quite broad because of this. The more specific your meditation, the more specific the benefit it is. The more broad the experience of meditation, the more widespread the benefits are. For instance, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Kids who have trouble focusing their mind. And what's found is adding this experience of inner awareness, pure wakefulness, a source of thought, they begin to be able to control their thoughts. Because remember, on a very practical thing, what's happening is increased blood flow to the front of the brain while the whole brain is rested. That's just what the ADHD kid needs. Because they actually have a lag in development between the rest of the brain and the front of the brain. So what we find is children who are learning ADHD, they become better at anger control, impulse control. They become better able at focusing. They're happier, they get along better with people around them. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress is due to a very traumatic experience. And what it does, it turns on one part of the emotional system, the amygdala. And the amygdala is our fear center. So what happens, a person with post-traumatic stress is walking around and everything is being experienced through this veil of fear. They're hypervigilant, they feel someone's out to get them. They distrust people. They feel as though they're out of control. And it's all because the brain, this link between inner and outer, has this switch on of the amygdala. I think the experience of this source of thought, this value of pure consciousness during transcendental meditation, as if turns the amygdala off. Because what we find in a very short period, a matter of a few days, the vast majority of veterans or women with post-traumatic stress, these symptoms just dramatically drop. We have research with African refugees, and we found these were Congolese refugees from the Congolese Civil War who were in Uganda. These refugees had lost their home, lost their belongings, lost many of their family members, saw atrocities done to their family members. They're in a country where they can't hold a job because they're refugees. They don't have a place to live. I mean, it's a very dire situation. But these individuals were able to sit down and practice transcendental meditation. All you need is a chair and 20 minutes morning and afternoon. What we found in 30 days, their post-traumatic stress symptoms went from very severe to non-symptomatic. And then in 135 days, they continued to go down. So these are people that are sort of on the edge of distress. Other people, normal students, what they find is just they're better able to hear what the teacher thinks is important. Again, remember this calm lake scenario? The student, if they're sitting there and worrying about their grades or worrying about does so-and-so like me and worrying, maybe anxious about something at home, it's like a pond which is really lots of waves. When the pond is quiet, you get a much clearer perception of what's around you. So what they find is their grade point average went up, but most importantly, how they saw school and how they saw themselves improved. It's a switch from stress to challenge. Because remember that time when you're under challenge, it's fun. Bring it on. I can handle it. And you have lots of creative ideas, and you have lots of energy. And indeed, the challenge, as it feeds you, and you feel better afterwards. And this is what fundamentally transcendental meditation is doing. It's making that switch so you can take on more information, and then you can begin to refine whatever levels of thinking you have to do. If you're an engineer and you need to get your math together, you'll do that. If it's art, it's visual perception, you'll be able to do that. If it's music, it's musical composition, you'll be able to do that. We've done research in San Francisco school district, and we've looked at at-risk schools. These are schools where you go through a metal detector to get to schools. And these are not high schools. These are kindergarten up through middle school. Metal detectors, policemen. This is how the kids have to go into school. There's fights, there's tension, there's anger. We started teaching transcendental meditation, and the school went from the bottom of all San Francisco schools up to near the top. Because the kids want to learn. You can't, if you have a 5 or 6-year-old, you can't stop them from learning. If they're day in and day out under stress, under a school system that doesn't support them as an individual, that desire to learn just gets extinguished. And what TRIM does is it just reignites that. And so the child is just naturally better able to focus in whichever area they're in.
Kako su djeca u školi prihvatila takvu novotariju? Veliki je skok od detektora metala i policajaca, znači potencijalnog rizika da razne bande imaju oružje po školi i slično, doći do trenutak gdje zapravo trebaš na neki način nadvladati ipak predodžbe okoline i odjednom da meditirati 20 minuta. Kako su se odnosili prema tome?
The children don't have preconceived notions, and they were told, this is going to be something that's going to let you deal with stress. It's going to let you be better at school. And also what was done is, for the first 10 minutes of school was called quiet time. So for 10 minutes, everyone was quiet. And if you wanted to learn transcendental meditation and meditate, then you could. If not, you had to read a book. Nobody talked. Phones were turned off. This is how they did it in school because of the points you're bringing out. You don't want the kid to think, well, I'm going to be weird. I'm going to be one of those guys closing their eyes. And so that's how they did it. And the kids, again, are very open, and they tried it. And especially the kids who are under high stress, they're the ones, it's like a light coming on in a dark room. For the first time, their mind can settle down and they can feel at peace. And it's a very real experience for them. And so it was very actually quite easy.
To su zapravo situacije koje možda nisu nikad u životu iskusili.
It's true. With the attention deficit hyperactive disorder students, this is what they would say. One person came out of their first meditation and they were very quiet for a moment, and then they said, this is a whole new world. They've never been settled, they've never been at peace, they've never felt completely whole. Because when the mind settles down and you experience something outside of time and space, what it is, it's whole and it's complete and it's self-sufficient and it's full and it feels right. It feels really okay. And so, and this isn't a cognitive thing that you're told or anything. It's the nature of that deep felt experience. And so it is something that they haven't experienced before, but something which they appreciate.
Pretpostavljam da na Maharishijevom sveučilištu za menadžment s kojeg i dolazite svakodnevna praksa transcendentalna meditacija je uobičajena.
Yes, actually, transcendental meditation is part of the school system. It's called consciousness-based education. We realize that what students require to be successful as students is the knower needs to be full in themselves. They need to be quiet, alert. They need to be able to focus. They need to be able to be free of the stresses. College is a very stressful time, especially the first year. So what we do is all the students meditate in the morning and then they come to class. And we have actually classes from 10 to 3. And it's not our lecture, but we lecture and we do exercises and so on. And then at 2:45 we stop the academic information and we all sit down and practice TM together. And so they have the meditation in the morning and then they come to school. And it's really fun to teach these students because they don't have their heads on the ground, on the desk. They're not asleep. They're not gazing out the window, spacing out. They're listening to you and they're asking you questions. And they're asking you really tough questions. Because their mind, remember this quiet lake, they're able to put together art and computer science and math and brain. And they begin to bring in an angle of the discussion that you've never considered before. So I find it's a very, very exciting place to teach. And then at the end of class, 2:45, we meditate again. It's the best meditation in the world. Because we've just been really focusing in, and then you just let go, the mind transcends, everyone sits in this silence, and you're sharing it. Students are sharing it, I'm sharing it with the students are sharing it with me. It's a very, I don't want to say bonding, that's sort of a cliche type of thing, but it really allows you and the students to begin to get on a very deep level, and they begin to trust you. And once they trust you, then they can ask their big questions. And then after meditation, they go and they do their homework and they do their exercising and they do all of that, and then they come in the next day. So it's the engine which is driving the success of Maharishi University of Management.
U zadnjih 30-40 godina bilo je puno pokušaja u raznim zemljama svijeta i drugdje da se uvode meditaciju u školu. Bilo je temelja zahvaljujući svim ovim grafikonima, statistikama, snimanjima kako mozak radi i sve drugo. Danas više pozitivni učinci meditacije nisu novost. Dakle, na koji način je obrazovni sustav u raznim državama ili pojedinačne škole reagirao na takve ideje? Jesu li prema njima bili dobrohotni, jesu li htjeli uopće ih razmotriti? Jesu li prevladavale neke njihove možda predodžbe i vezanosti meditacije uz nekakvu istočne religije ili slično? Koliko se uopće uspješno izvan Maharishijevih sveučilišta i srednjih škola meditacija nekako uvela u škole?
It's a very good question. What we're looking at is a new way to understand education, which is being put into a current paradigm. Remember we talk about the brain as a filter about which we see the world? Initially, they were very skeptical. I mean, you want to take 20 minutes or 40 minutes out of the day when they're not doing math, science, and language? I don't have time enough to teach them this. And this is the very pragmatic questions that we're bringing up. And so, but then they looked at what the reality was in front of them. The students and teachers were burning out. They were getting stressed. Though they were spending time on tasks, they weren't getting very much from it. So then they began some pilot projects. And then they began to see, and this is what, especially in the San Francisco School District, one of the teachers said, taking that 10 minutes beforehand allows the student to completely focus for the next 50 minutes. And so it's a value of getting rest as the advantage for activity. It's almost like shooting an arrow. You pull the arrow back first. And someone looking at you might say, no, you're going in the wrong direction. And you say, I know what I'm doing. And you let go and it flies to the target. So this is what happens. In Skelmersdale, England, there's been a school there with consciousness-based education for probably 20 years. And those students have performed so well on national tests that last year the British government made it one of their government schools. That means they will pay any British child to go to that school. Why? Because it turns out better students. And the better students, on one level it's grades. That's okay. But on the other level it's happiness, it's self-sufficiency, it's directedness. So what is happening is it's changing over time. It's a new paradigm. The idea that closing your eyes, doing something with the eyes closed can help your dynamic activity. It's a whole new paradigm. But as the research comes out, as people begin to speak and see other people being successful, and then they begin to try it, and ultimately people are pragmatic. If it's going to help me, I'll give it a try.
Na vašim predavanjima pokazujete i zanimljive grafikone vezane uz neke ljude koji su uspješni u svojim područjima, direktori tvrtki, menadžeri i slično, koji zapravo pokazuju neke odlike koje su slične one koje se mogu na neki način ljudima približiti kroz transcendentalnu meditaciju. Što su pokazale te usporedbe između onog što smatramo uspješnim ljudima i onog što zapravo nose sa sobom učenici meditacije?
Excellent. Remember that graph with the lines on it, the coherence graph. What you do is you begin to see that type of functioning more in activity. So that means the person is having more and more of this inner silence, this inner wakefulness, even in the midst of dynamic activity. This grows through transcendental meditation practice. We have many random assignment studies that show in college students, for instance, 3 months practice, this level of functioning, we call it brain integration, goes up if they're meditating throughout the school year. So we thought, well, let's look and see where we find this brain pattern and what does it mean. Is it just a meditation thing? You'll get it if you meditate. Or is it something which is a human thing? That is it a characteristic of brain functioning that we see in specific types of people? So we reason that what this brain functioning is showing is that you're more in touch with your silent inner being. This is where your creative ideas come up from. So you should be more successful. Our reasoning was this is allowing us to see the world less as stress, more as challenge, so you should be able to deal with the challenges more successfully. So we looked at successful people. We first started with athletes. We had 33 athletes who placed in the top 10 for at least 3 years, and these were in Olympic Games, World Games, or National Games. We compared them to athletes who did not consistently place, and what we found was higher levels of brain integration in the athletes, the world-class athletes who consistently placed. We did the same type of study with managers. These are managers who had been CEOs for at least 18 years, and during that time the company had expanded. We found they had higher levels of brain integration compared to controls. And when we speak about this, we don't suggest that if you practice TM and develop this style of brain functioning, brain integration, that you're going to be a great athlete or a great manager. Remember that analogy of either using the knife or sharpening the knife. But rather with transcendental meditation, you're able to sharpen the knife, you're able to develop that style of brain functioning, and then that's going to help you be more successful in whatever area of life you direct your attention.
Drugim riječima, ovi uspješni sportaši i direktori su na neki način imali jače razvijeno ono što zovemo obično sposobnošću intuicije, šireg sagledavanja problema. Jel bi se moglo to tako možda oblikovati u riječi?
Exactly. That's the practical benefit of being more connected with your inner self. And the managers would say this. They would say they seem to have better luck. They would seem to be just alert to some change in the business environment and the economic environment that they take advantage of, and they would be successful. Because again, the brain is the interface. It's the link between inner and outer. If the brain is functioning in a more integrated way, you're going to see the same situation differently. And this is the value of transcendental meditation, not to try to develop a specific individual skill, but to develop that quality of brain functioning that will help all areas of life. And it'll help you in development of all types of skills.
Gospodine Trevis, zahvaljujem na vašem vremenu.
My pleasure being here. Thank you for your very thoughtful question.
I do neke sljedeće prilike. Hvala i vama na pažnji. Sigurno jest da živimo u svijetu koji naše mozgove opasipa silnim podržajima i tisućama svakakih informacija svake sekunde. Trebaju li nam sve one uopće? Ili nam možda treba nešto više one prave unutarnje tišine s koje onda izviru ideje, inspiracija, mir. Kad ste zadnji put začuli? Ako se kod tišine uopće može govoriti o slušanju. Doduše ona ponekad dođe sama. Ponekad i u ovo doba noći. Laku noć.